Hey guys, Brendo Productions here, and welcome to, I believe this is part 19 of my Learning Java tutorial series. In this tutorial, we're going to be discussing how to use a mouse listener in an applet or a canvas situation in order to actually react with the user's mouse click. So here I have a class called MouseListener Tutorial, and I'm just going to use this class to demonstrate how exactly a mouse listener works. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to make this mouse listener tutorial an applet. So we can do this by making it a subclass of the applet class. It's also going to want us to import an applet, so we can do that by importing java.aut.applet. At least I think it's java.aut.applet. Maybe it's not. I'm just gonna let Eclipse. Oh, it's just java.applet. Okay, so what we've got is so we've got our applet here, and so what we want this applet to do is every time the user clicks on something, we are going to have it display a dot of a random color just to make it a little fun. So the first thing we're actually going to do, which is kind of unrelated to the tutorial, is we're actually going to want to set up a graphics system. So we're going to create a global variable called global graphics, and this is going to be a graphics variable. And in order to use this, we're going to want to import java.aut.graphics. Alright, so now that we have graphics imported and a global variable called global graphics, we're actually going to set this equal to null. Alright, so since we have an applet, all of our code for the applet is actually going to be run in this paint method. So as soon as the applet is created, the first method that's called is the paint method, and it sends in a graphics object called G. So this is just like the main method in a regular application, in a console application, but this is an applet, so it takes in a paint method. So what we're going to do in this paint method is we're actually going to set this global graphics so we can use it. So we're going to say if global graphics is null, then we're going to set global graphics equal to g.create. So this is just going to create a new graphics that can draw to the screen for global graphics, so we can use global graphics for other instances. So now that we've got our global graphics variable set up, we can actually set up the drawDots method. So what we're going to do is we're going to say public void drawDots, and this is going to take in, or drawDot rather, and this is going to take in a x position and a y position. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this method, and what we're going to do with it is set a random color value, and then we are going to draw a 2x2 dot onto the screen at the given x and y values. So how we can do this is we're just going to create 3 random numbers, and each one is going to be, in creating a new color, Java runs off of the RGB color scale. That's red, green, blue. So in order to specify a certain color, we need to give each red, green, or blue a value from 0 to 255. So what we're going to do is we're going to create 3 random numbers, one for red, one for green, one for blue, and each one's going to generate a random number between 0 and 255. So we're going to say int r, or r, equal to math.random, or actually, we're going to convert this all to an integer. We're going to say math.random, and math.random generates a random double from 0 to 0.9999. So in order to get a random value between 0 and 255, what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply this by 255. So then what we're going to end up doing is creating a math.random can produce 0 as its lowest value, which times 255 is 0, and 999 as its highest value, so times 255 is just about 255. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say int g equals int, and we're just going to do the same thing. So this is the green values. for our color, and then we're just going to say int b equals int math.random. Whoops. Times 255. And these are our blue values. So essentially what we're creating is a system of random red, random green, random blue, and we are converting this random integer to we're converting this random double actually to an integer. The only problem with this code is that math.random times 255 actually generates a random number from 0 to 254. So we're not going to be able to get all the color possibilities out of this random scheme here, but it's close enough, so it'll work. So now what we're going to say is we're going to say color random color equals new color, and then it's going to want us to specify the red, green, blue value, so we're just going to say RGB. And then finally we're going to want to import color, and now we have our new color to use, and we're just going to draw a dot with this. So we're going to say global graphics, which is the graphics that we're going to use to draw something onto the screen, dot set color, and we're going to say random color is our color that we're going to use, and then we're going to say global graphics dot draw or fill rect, and it's going to be the x position specified as a parameter to this method, the y position specified as a parameter to this method, and we're going to give these rectangles a width and height of 2. So now that our draw dot method is complete, we can actually get into the tutorial of how to use a mouse listener. So if we actually run this applet, you can see that nothing happens. This applet just kind of pops up. And if we click, nothing happens. So what we want to do is actually detect the user's mouse clicks. So how we're going to do this is first we need to actually create a mouse listener to use. Now what we could do is we could create our own separate class and have it be implement a mouse listener, or we can just make this class implement a mouse listener. So that is what we're going to end up doing. So now all we have to say is, just like we made this a subclass of applet by typing extends applet, we can make it implement a mouse listener by typing implements mouse listener. So now it's going to have us do a few things. First of all, it's going to have us import mouse listener, and the second thing it's going to have us do is add all of the methods that could make this class a mouse listener. And as you can see, these are all methods that Eclipse automatically added for us, since Eclipse is so nice to do that. And these are all the methods that you're actually going to want to do in order to control mouse clicks in your program. We've got when the mouse clicks, when the mouse actually enters your applet, when the mouse exits your applet, when the mouse is pressed, and when the mouse is released. So the one method that actually interests us in this application is the mouse clicked. So what we're going to do is we are first of all going to rename this parameter mouse event arg0 to mouse event e, because I like having e as my event specifiers. So this method will actually be called every time the mouse is clicked inside of the applet. So every time the mouse is clicked inside of the applet, we're actually going to want to call the draw dot method. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say int mouse x equal to e.getX. So this event here, e, actually contains all the information that we need in order to handle this mouse. We can get the mouse button that's being pressed, that's left click, middle click, right click. We can get how many times it was clicked. We can get the point in our applet in which this is clicked, or the point on the screen in which this is clicked. And the same thing with the y values. We can also get a small amount of information about the keyboard. So is the user also pressing Alt? Is the user also pressing Control? Is the user also pressing Shift on the keyboard? And then we've got a few other variables that would come in handy. But for now, all we need is we need to get the mouse X and the mouse Y values in order to draw the dot on the right part of the screen. So now we're just going to say int mouse Y equal to e.getY. And then finally, what we can do is we can call the draw dot method, and our draw dot method, we specified an x position and a y position to draw the dot, so we're going to send in the mouse x position and the mouse y position. And there you go. So currently our class is a mouse listener, and when the mouse is clicked, it does this. The only problem is when we run our applet, it actually doesn't know that it's its own mouse listener. So we actually have to tell the applet itself to use itself as a mouse listener. So this can be done in the init method. Now every applet has its own init method, which can be accessed by typing in public void init. So this init method, short for initialization or initiation, is called before the paint method, and what it does is it allows you to actually initialize any variables that need to be initialized. But in this case, we can use the init method to actually add the mouse listener to the applet. So we can do this by typing in this.add mouse listener. And then since this applet is its own mouse listener, all we have to do is type this. So normally you would have to create a new class that implements mouse listener, and then you can type in that class here. But since this class itself implements mouse listener, we can simply type in this. So let's go over this program one more time before we run it. We have global graphics that are set every time this applet is paint, or when the paint method is called, the global graphics are set. But before that happens, we're actually adding the mouse listener. And every time a mouse is clicked inside the applet, we are saving the X position of the mouse, the Y position of the mouse, and then we're drawing a 2x2 dot of random color at that position. Now one thing we should probably do is when the paint method is called, we're going to want to call this.setSize and make this applet, let's just say, pretty large. So we're going to say 800 by 600. So we don't have a tiny little applet with almost no click room. So let's go ahead and test out this applet now. So we run it, and as you can see, it resizes itself to 800 by 600. And we can click anywhere in the applet, and I don't think anything is drawing. Is anything drawing? No, it doesn't look like anything's drawing. Okay, so we have a slight complication here. I think that so our complication can either be with our random colors here, or it could be with our global graphics not actually initializing correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we set in the correct parameters for this color. So all it wants is RGB color. Yeah, so RGB. So we're doing that correctly. RGB, not RBG. And so we're having a random, and then we're setting that color, and then we're drawing the rect or filling the rect at XY, and it's 2, 2. So the last thing I can think about is our graphics are not being initialized properly. So what we can do is we can just say global graphics equals G and see if that does something. So we're just going to go ahead and run, and nothing happens. G.create. Let's see, what else has gone wrong? So we can actually debug this by making sure it's detecting our mouse clicks by saying system.out.println click. So every time we click on the screen, it should print out click to the console. And it does. It prints out click. And then so saving the mouse X and the mouse Y should be no problem, but calling the draw.dot method is where our actual problem is. So let's just see if it's the random colors that's setting us up, or giving us errors. So we're just going to set the color to color.black and actually draw the block there. And no blocks are being drawn. So that was a quick debug to figure out what's the matter, what the actual problem is. And the problem lies here in the global graphics.fillRect. 2, 2 might be too small for us to see, but I doubt that. So we can just make it bigger just because. But I really think the actual problem is the global graphics not being initialized properly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove this if statement from the print method, so it will always set global graphics equal to g.create. And that actually ended up solving the problem. I think the main problem is because when you actually open up an applet, the paint method is called twice, I believe. And so what we're doing is we're setting global graphics to the first time the paint method was called, but we weren't setting it to the second time the paint method was called. I have no idea if that's actually how it works. That's only what I've experienced. So now if we run the application one more time, we can see that every time we click, we actually print a 10 by 10 block of random color. Now we can actually hold down the mouse, and that doesn't do anything. I thought it would, but I guess not. But what we can actually do is no, that's pretty much it. What we can try doing is we can actually move this this line of code where it detects the X and the Y and it draws the dot over to the mouse pressed method, and that might allow us to hold down the mouse to get the dots. No, it doesn't. Okay, so in order to make it so you can hold it down, you're actually going to need to use this class called a mouse motion listener, which allows you to actually detect movement across the mouse. So you're holding it down, and you're creating motion with the mouse. So there are a few other things you can actually do with the mouse listener class. So for example, we can take this mouse entered, and when the mouse is entered, we can system.out.println mouse has entered. And when the mouse exits, we can system.out.println mouse exit. And when the mouse is released, we don't really have to print out anything there, but we can anyway, system.out.println mouse release. So now we can test out these few methods and see exactly what they do by running it. And as you can see, as we move our mouse along the applet, it actually stays with mouse has entered. But if we move the mouse out of the applet, the moment we do, it says mouse exit in the console. But if we bring it back, it says mouse has entered. Mouse exit, mouse. So that's a good way to detect if the mouse is actually inside of the applet. And if the mouse isn't inside the applet, you can actually do some things to reduce the system resources that this application is hogging. So we're going to go ahead and click, and when we click, it draws a nice purple dot there. And then when we actually release the mouse button, it says mouse release. So as you can see here, this mouse listener class has a lot to it, and this is essentially all you're going to need to create any sort of mouse detection. Now, what we can do is before we actually end this tutorial, we can test out a few modifiers. So we can create a new Boolean. We'll just see if the user is holding control. So we're going to say isControl, and we're going to set that equal to e.isControl_down. So if the user holds control, then we're going to have it so it actually draws a dot that's double the size. So we're going to change the drawDot method to take in width and height as well. And when it fills the rect, it's just going to fill with the specified width and height. So we're going to see if isControl. So if our Boolean is true, so if the user is holding control, we're going to make a dot that's 20 by 20. But if control is not down, we're going to draw a dot that is simply 10 by 10. So we're going to go ahead and test this out now by actually running our application again. So if we click, we get the same size dot that we got last time with random colors. However, if we hold down control and we click, we can see that our rectangles that we produce are actually double the size. Now let's say you want to do something with the right mouse click and the left mouse click, and you don't know what you're doing. So we can actually do this, get some diagnostics going. So we can, every time the mouse is pressed, we can system.out.println, and we can print out e.getButton. So when we run the application now, when we click, you could say that it prints out. You could see that it prints out 1. Well, that's because we're left clicking. If we right click, it prints out 3, and if we middle click, it prints out 2. So what we want to do is we actually want to make it so when you right click, it draws a very, very big block. So let's just say that. So what we can do is, since our right click is button 3, on the mouse pressed method, we can actually say, so if control is down, we're going to draw something that's 20 by 20. Else, if, so e.getButton equals mouse event dot button. Well, we could use the button 1, button 2, button 3, but the only problem is we don't know which one corresponds to what integer. So we just figured out that our no, we can do that. Event.button 3. So button 3 should be our right click, as we just figured out. So if we're going to right click, then we're going to draw a giant dot that's 50 by 50. But if we are not holding down control, and if we are not holding down, or if we're not pressing the right click, we're just going to draw a dot at mouse X and mouse Y that is 10 by 10. So we're going to go ahead and test out this application. So as we left click, it draws regular dots. Hold down control, it draws double the size. But if we right click, it draws humongous dots. So this was actually a really good example of how to use the mouse listener in order to actually detect the mouse in your program. There we go. Modern art. Anyway, thanks for watching this tutorial, guys. Hopefully it will help you. It's pretty much essential to making any sort of applet because you need to detect mouse clicks. However, once we get into creating a graphical user interface by using buttons and text boxes, this will become less important. So if you're making games or maybe a Microsoft Paint replica, sort of like we're doing now, you're going to need this actual mouse listener class. So the next tutorial is actually going to be about the mouse motion listener, so stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching this video, guys. Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.